What if I asked you to draw a tree? What would you draw? Probably something like this. Now, I want you to draw the feeling of a tree. You are not allowed to draw a physical tree or anything representing real life objects. You need to consider what a tree feels like to you. I want you to draw the emotion. Do trees make you feel happy, safe, and calm? Maybe you once fell out of a tree and now they make you anxious. Whatever you are feeling, how would you draw it? How would you depict that on a page? Now, that is much harder to do. Often we walk into modern art galleries and think, look at this. My 4-year-old little sister could draw that. And that's mainly because we do not understand the thought process behind the art. Let me ask you this. Is this a tree? Well, no. It's a picture of a tree. It's not really a tree. It's an illusion of a tree. As artists, we often take a 3D object from life and represent it on a 2D surface. We create the illusion of an actual object. And doing so, we add our own thoughts, our way of thinking and seeing into our art, adding our perspectives to the work. As artists, it is essential to be aware of this process and how it works. Many steps are involved between seeing an object and then drawing or painting it. Is this a tree? Well, according to the Dutch artist Piet Mondrian, it is. It is his painting of a tree, his interpretation. Piet Mondrian developed a new art movement called the Stijl, which was all about a new way of depicting the world. It wasn't about depicting the actual object, but rather capturing the feeling and the balance of the object. He took a simple object, like a tree, and simplified, 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 and simplified it to its utter core. Eventually, Piet Mondrian simplified the world around him into only primary colors, red, blue, and yellow, with horizontal and vertical black lines. This took years of work and abstract thought to arrive at this method. Today, Mondrian is celebrated for these minimalistic works, but arriving here has been quite a journey. He is known for his primary color block paintings, but we have 280 paintings by Piet Mondrian that aren't abstract at all. They are landscapes. 280 attempts before his art finally started morphing into something that changed the world forever. So buckle up and settle down as I share the story of Dutch artist Piet Mondrian and his revolutionary art. Oh, and by the way, I've got some awesome worksheets on Piet Mondrian available in my Teachers Pay Teachers store. They are loads of fun, so make sure to check them out. Mondrian was born in Amersfoort in the Netherlands, into a very religious family. His childhood was filled with heartache since his mother was often sick and his dad was super strict. As a young man, Mondrian dreamed of becoming a famous artist. He did biblical prints and painted landscapes, but in a very different way from the other Dutch landscape artists of the time. Mondrian wanted to be a famous artist, like Rembrandt, who was also Dutch. He had photos taken of himself in his studio to market his work and did a self-portrait, much like Rembrandt, all so that people would consider him a great artist. In his quest to become a famous artist, he often visits art exhibitions to see what other contemporaries are painting. At an exhibition, Mondrian saw Dutch artist Van Gogh's artwork, and he loved it. He started to incorporate Van Gogh's line work and dark blue lines into his landscapes. At another exhibition, Cubism also inspired Mondrian. He started to experiment with their styles and incorporated their bright, intense colors. Soon, Mondrian realized that the center of the art world at the time was Paris, and he dreamed of going there and meeting Picasso. So in 1911, Mondrian set off and moved to Paris. He saw Picasso and George Braque's art, and he was simply fascinated by their work. You see, those two artists were busy with a new movement called Cubism. And Cubism was about depicting one object from various angles on one canvas. So the artwork tends to look quite messy. But you see, it's all about the thinking behind the work. I don't have enough time to explain Cubism to you in this video. But what you need to know is that since the movement was all about a way of thinking, they had no use for color. Cubist artworks are predominantly painted in dark earth tones, and Mondrian was fascinated by the way they used the black lines in their artwork. The lines become a framework for the shape. It's almost like a skeleton with color planes hanging in between the lines. And here we can clearly see how Mondrian was influenced by the Cubists. Mondrian has always been fascinated by trees, and especially the negative space between the branches in the sky and the foliage. The negative space between the branches in his artwork become more important than the tree itself. In 1914, Mondrian hears that his father is sick, so he returns to the Netherlands to visit him. And something terrible happens. World War I breaks out, and Piet Mondrian becomes trapped in the Netherlands. He cannot leave his country. All his paint and art supplies were still in his flat in Paris. However, it was during this time that he started his most remarkable work. He met a group of artists, one of them being Theo van Doesburg, and the other Gerrit Rietveld. Together they started a new art movement called the Stijl. In Dutch, this simply means the style. And this art movement changed our world forever. It completely revolutionized architecture, product design, interior decorating, and art. Piet Mondrian was instrumental in the theory and thinking behind this movement. He called this new way of thinking neoplasticism. It was about stripping an object down to only its essential essence. Piet Mondrian believed that depicting the world in an abstract way was more beautiful and harmonious than reality. Remember, during this time, World War I was raging on, and it was horrible. Over 40 million people died. Mondrian wanted to create a better world, a world filled with beauty, peace, and balance. And he believed that art could change the world and prevent further wars. Was he successful? Sadly not. We still have wars. Humans simply cannot stop fighting. However, what Mondrian and his artist friends created had a lasting effect on our modern world. It basically kickstarted modern art and architecture as we know it today. The Rietveld Schroeder House was designed by Dutch architect Gerrit Rietveld in 1924. It is considered a groundbreaking example of the Stijl architecture and Piet Mondrian's new plasticism thinking. When you look at this house, I want you to remember that it's 100 years old. It still feels so modern. It consists of straight, clean lines. I don't believe there are any curves in this house. The top floor is designed for open-plan living, which was revolutionary at the time. It also has stack-away walls to transform this open space into partitioned bedrooms. Rietveld also designed furniture for the house, such as the iconic red and blue chair, which complemented the overall design aesthetic. Just so you can realize how revolutionary all of this was, let's compare this chair to a traditional Dutch chair of the time. Unfortunately, the De Stijl artists had a fight. Rumor has it that Van Doesburg wanted to include a diagonal line, and Mondrian would have none of it. He simply decided he could no longer work with Van Doesburg. And so they broke up and went their separate ways. In 1919, World War I ended, and Piet Mondrian returned to his beloved Paris. In Paris, he created some of his most famous grid paintings and kept on working on his simplification process. By now, all reality was removed from Piet Mondrian's art. He strived to depict the ideal balance and harmony of life. People started visiting his studio and were amazed at the minimalist interior. His writings about art became quite famous and influenced the Bauhaus art movement back in Germany. Mondrian loved the famous swirls of Van Gogh. He wanted people's eyes to move in a similar way around his canvases. So he created this rhythm in his work where your eye moves clockwise around the grid paintings. As Mondrian was painting in Paris, pushing himself and his art and his thinking process, Europe was quickly becoming a dangerous place for free thinkers and artists. During this time, the Nazi Party, led by Adolf Hitler, rapidly gained popularity. Eventually, Hitler declared war and started conquering Europe. Now you see, Hitler hated modern art and the freedom of thought that came with it. Hitler himself was a rejected artist. He applied twice to the Vienna School of Art, but was told instead to try architecture. You see, Hitler's art wasn't cutting edge enough. He was like a human printer, and they wanted him to be more free thinking, like the German expressionists that were popular at the time. Still holding a grudge, Hitler and his party really clamped down on the modern art movements. The Degenerate Art Exhibition was organized by the Nazis in Munich in 1937. The exhibition aimed to vilify and condemn modern art forms that did not conform to the Nazis' ideals of the Aryan purity. The Nazis labeled these artworks as degenerate and sought to undermine their value and influence. The exhibition featured works by artists such as Pablo Picasso, Vasily Kandinsky, Marc Chagall, and Piet Mondrian, among others. The intention of this exhibition was to mock and ridicule the artists and their work. Many of the artworks were confiscated from museums and collections, and some were even destroyed. Once again, Mondrian is trapped by war, but this time he decides to flee. He moved to London in 1938 to escape all the tension in Paris. However, a bomb fell on the house where he stayed in London. So he decided it's best to leave for America as soon as possible. In September 1940, he sets sail for America and moves to New York. Various artists started to flee from Nazi-controlled Europe to America. The United States was seen as a safe haven for intellectual and creative freedom. In America, artists found supportive communities in cities like New York, which became a hub for artistic innovation and collaboration. When Mondrian saw New York, he simply fell in love. He loved the hustling and the bustling and the jazz music. Mondrian even loved New York traffic. Maybe it was New York's grid system that appealed to Mondrian's love of order. The city was alive at night, which was a stark contrast to London's darkened streets to avoid air raids. Mondrian decided to depict New York using his abstract thinking. In his new body of work, we see the black lines start to fall away and color lines run over each other. He also depicted the feeling and rhythm of jazz music in his famous painting, Broadway Boogie Woogie. Broadway Boogie Woogie was a popular dance at the time. By just looking at this painting, you can feel the vibrancy, the rhythm and the beat, and almost hear the trumpets of the jazz. Sadly, Mondrian's newfound peace didn't last that long. Soon America joined the war. And Mondrian died only after 3.5 years of living in New York. Now that you know the story and have seen the artwork, I bet you are wondering how he made these paintings. Did he use a ruler? Well, no. He was kind of a weird artist, if you think about it. His studio looked more like a laboratory than a typical messy creative space. It was spotless and precise. Mondrian planned the lines of his painting using a pencil, and then created his own version of masking tape to paint the lines. Looking at his canvases up close, you can see the ridge the paint formed at the edge of this tape. Later in New York, the first version of masking tape was released, and Mondrian wanted to be seen as a cutting-edge artist that used the latest technology to create art. So he went out and bought stacks of these gummy tape rolls. In some of his last artworks, he even used the tape as part of his artwork. The little pieces of tape are still embedded into the lines. Mondrian had no patience with oil paint's drying time. When we look at the squares closely, you can see millions of little brushstrokes to get the shape solid. He was clearly fiddling. But since he had no patience, he did something a little bit stupid. He added some petroleum to his paint so that the oil could dry quickly. This is a big no-no if you want your painting to last forever. Today, these paintings are flaking and cracking, and a bit of a nightmare for museums to preserve. It's a bit ironic since Mondrian never wanted to frame his paintings. He didn't want to cage them in. He wanted them to bleed freely into the space and wanted people to imagine them expanding all over the walls and floors. Sadly, now museums have to frame his work since it's so hard to keep the work protected with all those cracks and flakes. Regardless of the damage, these artworks changed the world. Let's look at Piet Mondrian's massive influence. Today, you can buy Piet Mondrian shoes, watches, handbags, and coats. You can live in a Piet Mondrian-inspired house. How cool is this interior? And ooh, this one glows. His work has been in movies, on runways, in magazines, on album covers, in adverts, and in posters. He is simply everywhere. But Mondrian's work is not really about slapping primary colored squares and black lines on everything. It is the thinking behind it that matters. The idea that we should strip away excess and distill everything to its essence. This philosophy results from years of refinement, focusing on what's essential and eliminating the superfluous. By doing so, we can appreciate true beauty and harmony. Piet Mondrian's emphasis on minimalism and simplicity helped shape our modern world. As a founding member of the Stijl movement, Mondrian revolutionized modern living. Today, Mondrian is celebrated as one of the pioneers of abstract art. His signature style contributed to the development of non-objective painting, where the emphasis is on form, color, and composition, rather than representing recognizable objects. I want you to always remember that Piet Mondrian's abstract style was a journey that spanned over the years. He painstakingly crafted his abstract style. He delved deep into the works of various artists, tirelessly experimenting with a multitude of art styles, all in pursuit of nurturing his own unique, original ideas. In summary, Piet Mondrian's influence is profound, reaching well beyond the realm of painting. His contributions to abstract art, the Stijl movement, and his innovative use of form and color have had a profound and enduring impact on the art world, design, architecture, and popular culture. I'm artist Lillian Gray, and I love teaching art and art history. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and drop a comment. It really helps the channel to grow. This is a reminder that I've got some awesome worksheets related to Piet Mondrian available on my Teachers Pay Teachers store. Until next time!